So it's my very great honor to be here today. The reason I am here today, being able to give this presentation and have a lot of colleagues working on this topic, is, I would say, to a large extent because I was extremely lucky in choosing who to work with when we started this project. So we had an idea. My colleague, Brian Worthington, who was in the audience and you'll meet later, challenged me a few years ago to say, what happens with all the fossil fuel infrastructure now that we decarbonize? What are we going to do with all the infrastructure? There must be a good idea. Is it reusable in some way? When we didn't really find that much research on it, surprisingly, other than carbon capture, maybe. And so we thought, okay, let's figure this out. And as luck would have it, I found two people that have made all of this, I think, possible, which is Professor Bartella and his colleague Pavel Gladush. They have really been the luck of our organization. Everything we've done, that we found them, we started working with them, and they've just been absolutely incredible and taken it all the way here to this room with all of you extremely important people hearing about this and knowing about this. So thank you, Lukasz. Thank you, Poland, for taking the lead on this. It's our honor to be here, and it's our honor to talk to you and share some ideas about what we've been working on and what we want to work on and what we can do in this field. So what you're looking at now is a map of the world, and at the bottom is a time axis starting exactly 100 years ago today. And we will be seeing a bunch of dots come in and out of existence. Each dot that you will see on this map represents a coal-fired unit being constructed, and then after a few years, it's fading away to see or show us where we are building coal units and how many we've built and at what rate we built them. So I'll play this animation. So in the beginning in the US, 100 years ago, and then Europe, kind of a linear progression. We just keep building at the same rate, and then suddenly China explodes, Asia explodes, and we build enormous amounts of coal units all over the world. What makes this summit, this conference, interesting, I think more interesting than most conferences I go to, and hopefully you go to, is in every other conference you go to, what we just seen is framed as the problem. How do we deal with this horrible legacy, this problem of building all of these things? What do we do now? We have done all this. How do we deal with the problem? In this conference, we say, I think, what we want to say is, how do we make use of the opportunity of having done this? How do we make use of all of the investments that we've done in all of these plants, all these units, to make our life in the future easier? So that's a much more interesting question on how to deal with the problem. How can we utilize the opportunity of having done this, having built all this, having invested all this? Is there value in what we've done? And how do we squeeze out the maximum value for all of us, for all the countries that built all these plants, and do so in a what we call a just way? So that's, I think, a much more interesting framing of a question than just how we deal with the problem. Where's the opportunity and how can we make use of it? So coal in numbers, I'm sure many of you already know this. We've built about 3,000 separate different coal power plants, almost 9,000 individual boiler units, out of which more than 6,000 are in operation now. So just a small fraction of coal that we've built has actually been decommissioned. More than 2 terawatts of capacity in operation. A very interesting fact that shocked us when we first looked at the data is 700 gigawatts or so of that is brand new, more or less brand new. Many of them 5, 6, 7 years old. So they've just started running, they've just trimmed in those plants, and they're ready to go for many, many decades, technically. But, of course, we're supposed to decarbonize. We have to find a way to do this. We've invested trillions of dollars into these plants. And if they all run, the ones we've built, the ones that are being in construction, if they all run, their normal technical lifespans, they commit us to about 200 billion tons of CO2 emissions. So they alone eat up all of our carbon budget if they get to run. So we're in an interesting opportunity space. We've invested a lot of things, or a lot of money in a lot of plants, and we need to find a way to squeeze out value while we decarbonize out of it. So what is the future of coal power plants? So typically, I wouldn't say we invented this idea, but it wasn't much discussed before Lukáš and Pavel and our group and many other excellent people around the world started looking at this only 5 or 6 years ago, really, really seriously. Typically, one pathway obviously is to continue to operate the plants, their technical lifespans. If you don't really care about the emissions, you can just do that. If you care, you could add post-combustion carbon capture, a fairly well-studied technology option. A second one, which is gaining popularity, sometimes to our worry, gaining popularity, is fuel switching or co-firing. So you have a coal power plant, but you don't only want to burn coal in it, you chuck in some biomass, or you switch or plan to switch to ammonia or hydrogen co-firing, or even fully switching. Or possibly the, vastly most popular alternative with environmental NGOs and many people concerned about the environment is just retire these coal plants early, long before their technical lifespan, strand the investments, unfortunately make a lot of people unemployed, and build new capacity, typically renewable capacity somewhere else. There is a role, undoubtedly, some role for all of these three pathways. There will be coal plants where the best thing to do is just decommission, and there's no real value in trying to do anything else with it. There'll be many such plants. Some of them you might be able to switch to other fuels in a sustainable way. Certainly, we should do carbon capture on some of these plants. But what we are proposing and have been proposing and trying to popularize is kind of a fourth alternative. So we decarbonize the plant, we go to the plant and we convert it into a clean energy plant, repower it in that way. We try to avoid stranding the assets. So if there's physical components in good technical condition, we try to reuse it as much as possible, if it makes sense. We maintain, very critically, local economic activity. Hundreds of people are employed at every single coal power plant, many more in coal mining. We unfortunately this idea does not do much for that, but all the employment around the coal power plant, this idea is trying to maintain. So not just the people, but the site, the permits, and the equipment as much as possible. And critically, what we are saying when we say repower is not decommission a coal plant, tear it down, and sprinkle some solar panels where there used to be a coal plant. That does not qualify in our world as a repowering project. It should be the new plants, the repowered plant should provide what the old plant did in terms of how much energy it could be producing, how much services it gave to the grid, and how much employment and economic activity locally it's providing. That's a real repowering project to us. So, what we are trying to shift the perception a little bit from is this. This is a typical pathway for, these are very innocent, any engineer here will know, very innocent pieces of equipment in a coal plant. This is just cooling towers. They have never emitted any CO2 or done any harm to anyone. But we like to blow things like this up for the show of it. And we are trying to change the mindset of going and blowing things up. It's trying instead to see, we've built this, we spent money on it, there's people working there, could we use it instead of blowing it up? That's crudely what we are trying to envision as a pathway forward. So, framing this from the very beginning, we had a very strict criteria for what we call repowering. What's really a repowering project? Not decommission and sprinkle a solar panel that makes 0.1% of the coal power plant's power output. That is not repowering. That is a thing for sustainability reports front page. Real repowering for us is, can we decarbonize the site and avoid stranding as much of the investment as possible, avoid firing the local workforce, so retraining who needs to be retained, retaining everyone that can be retained, and avoid abandoning the site and the permits. You have a lot of permits at an existing power plant that are very, very much a headache to get at a greenfield power plant. You do have legacy cleanup to do. You could have asbestos in the coal power plant. There's a lot of problems that a lot of people can point out to why it's very difficult and a big headache to try to go to a coal plant and convert it into a clean plant. I think a lot of the people who point out all the problems with it have not had enough experience trying to do a greenfield project, where you also have an enormous list of headaches. So we have to balance these against each other. And critically, the second component, coupled to the first, these plants fill vital roles for the power grid, for the stability of the power grid. They provide inertia, they provide reactive compensation for voltage control. They provide reliable power when you need it, without any fluctuations with weather conditions. These are extremely important. Many of them provide heating. In Poland, for example, they provide district heating, heat your homes in the winter. And if we repower, we have to retain all of these characteristics, or as many of them as we can. So that's kind of what we're aiming for. So there was a question there, can we do this? And we worked a lot. So I'm showing here, I won't go into every single publication that we've done together, but there's kind of a snapshot of many of them to say, we looked at this. Is the answer to those two coupled questions yes or no? And in general, not at every coal plant, certainly not at every one, but in a lot of sites and a lot of conditions, yes, it's possible to do 1 and 2. Okay, but then your natural follow-up question is, okay, how, when, where, how much does it cost, and how do we finance the projects? This is the meaning of a conference like this, to figure this out together, to discuss it together, hopefully as informally as we can. How do we do these things? We've tried, and we are trying to work on solving these questions. So just as a visualization, what could it look like? Kind of our favorite original example, converting a coal power plant into a nuclear plant. So this is a stylized kind of graphic of what the equipment might look like at a typical coal power plant. You start, in this case, this is a recently decommissioned but still in good condition coal power plant. Well, what you're not going to need if you repower is coal and ash handling. So the big ash ponds need to be cleaned up. The coal storage facility is not needed anymore. And you don't need coal boiler units because you're not going to burn coal anymore. So you remove them from the site. And then on the site or next to the site, you establish a construction project for whatever is going to replace the coal boilers. In this case, small modular nuclear. It could be geothermal. It could be a host of different technology options that I will go through. You build them, and suddenly, what used to be a coal power plant emitting a lot of CO2 is now an equivalent or even better technically plant on the same site with the same people, much of the same equipment, now providing clean energy for the next 60 to 80 years. So this is an illustration of what could happen. Most of the time, this is not what's going to happen. Most coal repowering projects will only reuse a fraction of what I've reused here. This is kind of the best case scenario when you have a very fresh coal power plant. There is residual value in all the equipment, but it is kind of the technically most interesting one. In many cases, what you reuse primarily will be the site, the people, and the transmission grid connection. Already extremely valuable, and possibly the permits. So what can you do? We talked a lot about nuclear. I know this is very popular with our friends in Korea. It's very popular with our friends here in Poland, the coal to nuclear pathway. It's not the only pathway. There are at least 10 pathways that we are studying or have studied that all work, but not all of them work on every coal power plant site. There is not a one-size-fits-all, but there's something that fits everything. So there is a host of different options. For some plants, nuclear is out of the question. It's just located in a place where you don't want to build nuclear. It might be seismically active. It might be too close to a big city. There might be a host of issues why you don't want to build nuclear. In some places, it's really hot under the ground and excellent geothermal conditions. Maybe a geothermal repowering is the way to go. Or you are on a coastal site right next to an excellent offshore wind farm opportunity. You tie in your grid connection to that coal power plant. So we've identified 10 different pathways, I think all worthy of discussion. Even though you might have your own favorite, I think they should all be analyzed to motivate why your favorite is the best option. You can't just say, I like that one, so we go for that one. I think we have to look at all of them. One thing that we haven't, so this is kind of a graphic of what could happen. Up at the left is the coal power plant. They kind of already popular and well-studied options is post-combustion carbon capture, an excellent idea in many places, a terrible idea in other places. Biomass, ammonia, hydrogen, coal-firing, switching, also well-known idea, often problematic, sometimes feasible. And then we have all these kind of green ground options. And one thing I should stress is there are different pathways. It doesn't mean they're mutually exclusive. If you want to repower a coal plant that might have, a slated shut-off date for 2035, you might not wait till 2035 to repower it. You could start partially repowering it in various ways before then, and then at the end, go for the final push to really replace it. So what you can do next week is to put solar panels on the cleared ground next to the coal plant. They typically have a lot of land, right? And then as you progress, you can add more and more of these options, and at the end, you might end up with a site that has a bunch of different equipment optimally configured, not just nuclear or geothermal or solar, whatever it might be. So multi-stage, fully repowered coal power plants is what we're looking for. One thing we haven't discussed earlier that much, but I think we will discuss here, is kind of the API. How do you connect to the existing equipment at a coal power plant? So a coal power plant today is struggling a bit technically to operate in a system where power prices are very volatile. You might have enormous amounts of wind and solar, and when it's windy and sunny, power prices go down to zero, maybe negative. The coal power plant doesn't like to shut off and start up. It takes some time. It also doesn't like to maintain, technically, its minimum power level, especially having to produce power when power prices are negative, if you're exposed to the power price, is a terrible economic idea, right? So this is kind of suboptimal for the future. If you have a coal power plant, you would want to be able to produce when the power price is the highest and not produce when the power price is negative or zero or below your marginal cost, right? So could we avoid shutting down the plants and starting them back up, or just kind of suffering through minimum load operation and sell at high prices? Yes. You could, in theory, add thermal energy storage. And when the grid doesn't need you, you can dump your heat into a storage device. And when the grid needs you, you don't have to burn as much coal, and you can provide all of your power to the grid. So this is kind of penciling out economically in some markets now. But I think the most important part of an idea like this is not that you might increase profitability of the coal plant, but it prepares the coal plant for a life after coal if you start doing this. Technically, it prepares the coal plant for what should come next, which is some way, either just sourcing electricity from the grid or a low-carbon heat source, like nuclear or geothermal, coming into the site and replacing the coal boilers. They will connect, if there is anything to connect to of any value, via a storage system. It's very difficult to imagine that they wouldn't connect in this way. Because if you want to have a nuclear reactor come in and reuse something of the steam cycle, a condenser cooling system of a coal plant, you have to be extremely lucky for them to match well enough for you to be able to do that. It's the technical matching between these two is very difficult, as we found in all our studies. If you have an intermediate storage system, it's quite easy to match it. So this is, in the analogy of software development, the API of coal repowering. It's a thermal energy storage system. We'll hear more about that. So I just wanted to highlight, even if you don't want to reuse your steam turbine, the steam turbine is too old, it's not suitable, it still makes sense as a future-proofing for a coal power plant to look at thermal energy storage, because once you don't want to or cannot economically or legislatively burn coal anymore, you have the API equipment to have a future for your plant, your site, and your people. So we studied with Lukas, with Pavel, with our friends in China, with our friends in Korea, in India, in Indonesia, many places. What could be the benefits if everything goes as good as it possibly can in a full repowering project? And this is kind of just a sales pitch for this. If you're able to do it and go in and fully repower a plant, you could, in the best case scenario, knock out quite a lot of the upfront capex. You can lower the LCOE. Maybe most importantly, if you do this well, you will have social acceptance for decarbonization. So if I come here to Katowice and say, we're going to decarbonize Poland, so we're going to shut off all the coal power plants in southern Poland, decommission them, fire all the people that work there, but we're going to build an offshore wind farm in the Baltic, and now we're going to have clean power. It's not a very attractive prospect for the people who are here working at these plants or relying on them economically, right? They might care about the environment as much as anyone, but it's not locally a very attractive prospect, that time of decarbonization. If you go and say, we're going to decarbonize, and we're not just going to keep the jobs here, we're going to increase the jobs because we're going to have new construction, we're going to have new investment locally, decarbonization turns from a kind of a risky, fearful prospect into something that's actually exciting locally as well. You can, in the best case, retain a lot of the investment. If you go to a new plant, you have new equipment, new cooling towers, new condenser cooling systems, a new steam turbine, new admin buildings, all of these things, and just kind of don't use the coal boilers. Yes, you can retain a lot of the investments you made. This is really a best case scenario, but in a sales pitch, you have to present that. One thing that is understudied and underemphasized is the growing difficulty to find a grid connection. So you say, okay, I don't want to worry about this dirty old plant and cleaning it up and trying to squeeze in new equipment there because there's a headache. I'll just do a greenfield project. It's much easier. It's actually getting harder and harder to find a place to connect a large, either consumer or producer, to the power grid. The value in having a massive existing grid connection on the site has been underappreciated until very recently. And it's only really with all of the data centers wanting to scale to gigawatt scale immediately as quickly as possible, and they can't find anywhere to plug into the grid, that people are starting to realize these older coal plants also have an enormous value in the fact that they have a transmission grid connection to high voltage cables. So, our initiative is a global one. I am a tiny little part of it. We have a global network. If we count everyone who's involved, more than 100 people. We've done 4 summits. This is by far the most impressive one. Lovely to be here for this. 30 publications. We've gathered, it's not like we've done all these projects, but we've gathered and trying to support a lot of actual real repowering projects in the world. And we have, I think, a stellar network of partners. If you are not a partner and you want to join this work, reach out to us. This is a non-profit initiative from our side. We're not trying to make any business out of this. We are just trying to promote the idea. And everything we do, every study, every analysis, every piece of work that we do is fully publicly available for free for anyone and everyone. So what do? We do country partnerships. We have experts locally in all the countries we work in. We are trying to expand to new geographies for this. We didn't do much public communication earlier. Now we're doing that quite a lot. We have a great social media team. There's someone videographing this, I think. We'll put that up and interview you guys to just share and spread this idea. We have a service called Repower Score that I hope before you leave here, everyone would have played with. Checked out your local coal power plant. It tries to score every single coal unit in the world for how suitable it is to repower in various ways. I'll have one slide about that, but I'm probably running out of time. We're also trying to work directly with utilities that have an interest in a feasibility study or a pathway for their plants to convert. So repowerscore.org. Don't use your phones while people are presenting, but when there's a break, do go to repowerscore.org and check it out. It's difficult on a phone, but on a laptop, it's quite beautiful. It ranks every single plant and units in the world for different pathways of repowering with different years of repowering. And you can toggle various things and say, I care more about this and I care less about that in the scoring, and it will recalculate the scoring for you. So if you're a utility, you can punch in your name here in the search, say, I'm utility name this. It will show you just your plants, and it will rank them and say, this plant is the easiest one for you to go and look at repowering. So it could be quite useful. We have a great team constantly developing this, adding more pathways. And anyone who wants to contribute local expertise, either local expertise in terms of technologies that we could look at or geographical local expertise, do reach out because we need your help. So we went from this kind of beautiful academic studies in the beginning, and we're still doing them, but now we're transitioning more to implementation. So actual case studies. Go look at an actual plant, an actual unit in a plant, and say, what is the most reasonable thing to do with this? Should we decommission it, walk away? Should we turn it into something? We're trying to do that unit by unit basis now. There are a bunch of projects, some of which we're involved in, some of which we have can't take any credit for. But this map is just to show that it's not just PowerPoint. It's not just a hypothetical idea that someone might do something about in the future. Real projects are really happening right now. So people are actually doing this. This is our last meeting. We were in Seoul, in Korea, had a lovely time. You see how many people we were? We're saying we want to double at least every time we have a meeting. And because of our friends here in Poland and Lukasz and everyone, we have, I think we've quadrupled this time. So we met our target. It is my great honor and pleasure to be with you, and I look forward to the next couple of days. Thank you very much.